Gold Camp Road is a 25-mile stretch of dirt road that goes out of the west end of Colorado Springs.
It's very curvy, has steep cliffs. You have to be pretty brave to drive that road at night.
Sure, this is it?
Well, that's what the sign says.
It's a beautiful drive, but at nighttime, it also has a special draw. There's legends that the ghosts of miners from back in the 1800s can be heard.
Man, it's dark out there.
Yeah, I mean, how are we even gonna see the ghosts?
Don't be such a skeptic, Lucas. Maybe we'll hear them.
They came around the bend and there was something in the road.
What in the world is that?
Lo and behold, here's a lady, a naked lady. Blood soaked from head to toe. This is more terrifying than finding any ghost. She needs help, and she needs help now.
It was 1977, and I had been a detective for about a year. Back then, you didn't have a partner, but you were working with your own experience and by your wits.
On this particular morning, Detective Kenda is next up in the rotation to get a case.
Kenda, got something for you.
Sure. So what do we got?
A family picked up an injured woman last night, took her to St. Francis. Doctors there think someone tried to kill her. That's where you come in.
Yes, sir.
There was a victim who was young, probably between the ages of 18 and 21. The doctors admitted her as a Jane Doe to the intensive care unit.
On a case like this, where do you start your investigation? Well, you need to go to the hospital. That's where the victim's at. You've got no crime scene to go to.
Are you the detective?
Yes, Joe Kenda.
Hi, Dr. Langstaff. She's lucky she's alive.
This victim had been beaten, had been stabbed 6 times, and had been savagely sexually assaulted.
You know, there's something else. It may not be related, but we all noticed. It looks like someone sawed off a chunk of her hair with a knife. It's too weird to be a haircut.
Yeah, that could be helpful. Could have been taken by her attacker.
People who commit the crimes of sexual assault take souvenirs to relive the moment. If he took the hair, he kept the hair.
We have a name yet?
No, she's unconscious still. To be honest, she might not make it.
With the victim unable to describe her assailant, Kenda's only way forward is to pinpoint the exact location where the crime occurred.
So now my next stop is the Gold Camp Road. What can I learn going up there, if anything?
The Piazza family have agreed to take investigators back to the scene where they found this young lady.
So, she was walking down the road towards us and she collapsed. It's right about here. God, it was terrifying.
I bet. You know, you just might have saved her life. You should be proud.
Yeah, we just did what anyone would have done, you know?
Now, do you mind waiting by the car? We're gonna have a look around.
Yeah.
Another one there.
You can still see some blood there. are severe drop-offs to one side of that road, and there appears to be blood on some of the rocks down that embankment. So did our man throw her over this cliff after he assaulted her? It looks as if he might have. She somehow then managed to crawl up that embankment because when those passersby found her, she was on the road.
The blood trail suggests the true nature of the attack on Kenda's Jane Doe, but he will need additional physical evidence in order to identify the perpetrator. Kenda wonders if that evidence might be found in the ravine below.
If he disposed of her, what else did he dispose of?
Detective Kenda, dispatch.
Dispatch.
Can you patch me through to the fire department's mountain rescue team?
10-4, detective.
So how far down do you think you need to go?
I don't know exactly. I just need to follow the blood trail and see where it takes me.
Okay, well, let's go get you brigged up. Hey, Joe?
You can't just step off the side of the road and start walking down there.
I'm not a mountaineer or a rock climber, but you don't really think about that. You just do it.
Here goes nothing.
Joe actually rappelled down the side of that cliff there to see what evidence could be found. You know, you could take a tumble and not stop falling for 150 feet. It's very treacherous.
I've carefully worked my way down to where I saw the blood. And I work my way down a little further, and I see more blood.
Anything?
Negative, just more blood.
You okay down there?
No, I'm all good.
I see more blood against a very large rock. So that's the stopping point. She ran into that, and it prevented her from falling any further down this embankment, or she would have never been found. We would have found bones, maybe, at some point.
Joe described after rappelling down, seeing handprints of blood on rocks and whatnot as this young lady clawed her way back to the top of that road.
Surveying the base of the ravine, Kenda finds nothing other than the bloody handprints.
There was absolutely nothing. No fragments of clothes, no shoes, no anything. Blood and blood only. I am left with absolutely nothing to lead me to the identity of a very sick and dangerous individual.
All right, I'm coming back up.
I know he's still out there. He's enjoying his memory of this enough to want to experience it again. What can I do to stop that? At the moment, I can't do a thing. I'm a young detective who got assigned to this case of a woman being assaulted and stabbed and thrown off a cliff. Now what?
Hey, Kenda. How's the new case going?
Basically, no physical evidence at the crime scene, no witnesses, no victim ID, and she might not make it. That's my guess. Our guy's gonna do it again.
And he just shook his head like, well, that's not good. No, it's not good.
All right. Keep at it.
Miss Kenda.
Hey, Kenda, Dr. Langstaff at St. Francis. Your girl's awake.
My only hope is that she remembers enough to lead me to whoever this is before he does it again.
Speaking with the staff at St. Francis, Kenda learns his Jane Doe is in fact 20-year-old Caitlin Bennett.
Caitlin, I'm Detective Kenda. Mind if I ask you a few questions?
I just thought you'd never get here. I want you to lock that bastard up.
She's alert, she is talkative, and she's obviously one tough little chick. And you could see her demeanor was the reason she survived.
First, I need some basics. Is there anyone, family members that I could notify, let them know that you're okay?
Not really. I'm on my own.
She was having family problems, fighting with her mother, and so she moved out of the house, but she really didn't have anything to live on.
In order to survive, Caitlin turned to prostitution.
Society has always looked down upon people who choose prostitution as a method of survival. I say to all of those people, they wouldn't be so critical if they ever had been in their shoes. There is an enormous occupational hazard associated with being a prostitute. You're going to get into a vehicle with someone you have no idea who he is and no idea what his intentions are.
For now, I need your help finding out who did this to me.
I'll do whatever it takes. Just find him.
She, fortunately for me, had an excellent memory of this entire event.
This guy in a white pickup just pulled up. He had one of those camper cells in the back. You looking for a good time?
That's exactly what I'm looking for. Come on in.
I mean, he seemed nice enough. I didn't think much of it.
Do you remember what he looked like?
White guy. That hair. He had red hair.
That's something that is easily spottable, and so fortunately, that was something to go on.
He said his wife was home. So he wanted to drive and park somewhere so we could have some privacy. So we drove to Gold Camp Road.
She was not alarmed in any way. He was nice, told her how pretty she was, and general banter as they're driving a short distance away till he got into an area that was fairly secluded. And then he said to her, let's get in the back of the truck where we have more room.
He opened the tailgate. Started shoving stuff aside, and I climbed in. He must have whacked me in the head with something, because everything went black.
When she awakened, she was naked, bleeding, grievously hurt, and laying against a boulder 100 feet down the ravine from where she had been in that truck.
And I thought, I'd be damned if this is how I die.
She was going to live, no matter what. She's going to make every effort to survive. You have to admire that. You don't see that very often. I had never seen it to that level.
It's the kind of thing where your survival instinct takes over.
She might have been easy to pick up, but she wasn't going to be easy to put down.
You already gave me his description. What about his truck? You said white, camper shell. Was there anything else distinctive about it?
No, not really. When I was climbing in the back, I mean, the last thing I remember seeing were just a bunch of tools.
Tools? What kind of tools?
Like wrenches. Big red ones. There was a wheel in front of them. It was like 2 or 3 feet long.
Okay, Caitlin. Thank you. I will find him. I promise you.
So now I've got something to do, and I've got places to go. The first step is to go to South Nevada Avenue to find the girls who were with her when she got in that white truck.
We'll run back one next time, huh? Thanks a lot, jackass. You just cost me a customer.
You know a girl named Caitlin Bennett?
Yeah, we know Katie. She doing okay?
She's in bad shape. She's gonna be all right. Did you happen to see who she left with yesterday?
He was driving a white truck. Never seen him before.
Did you get a look at him? License plate? Anything?
No.
Thanks for your help.
So maybe this is his first time. We just need to find him before he tries his second one.
The chances of him showing up back here on South Nevada are pretty high. So you want to continue to pull surveillance to see if this particular truck pulls back up.
So I instructed the sector officers who work the South Nevada area. I got a white truck with a camper shell and a red-headed white male driver. You see that guy, you stop, you identify him.
All right, this looks like our guy. Let's go.
These people develop an appetite for this. Once they commit it once, they want to do it again.
Don't move! See your hand! Hold it right there!
We are looking for this white truck and a red-headed driver to put a stop to what I suspect will be a pattern of extreme violence if we don't find it.
Let me see your hands!
Hey man, it's cool. I was just asking one of these girls for directions.
The driver was identified, and it's obvious he wasn't the guy we're looking for.
Directions, huh? Did you get lost on your way to church?
No.
Sorry, it's a false alarm. You go ahead and get out of here.
All right.
I'm gonna head back to the office, leave this to you and your guys. Okay, Joe. I'll call you if we find something.
After coming up empty, Kenda hands over surveillance duties to the Vice Squad and heads back to the office to take another look at the victim's statement.
We're back to her description of the contents of the back of the truck. She said he had tools in there. They were red and they were 2 or 3 feet long, and they had like a wheel at the front. So I did a quick little drawing. Now, as a young policeman, married with 2 children, I made little or no money. I was a do-it-yourself guy. I had a very good understanding of tools, and I used them all the time. Well, that's a pipe wrench. So I began thinking about that when she described 3 feet long wrenches, pipe wrenches. A homeowner would never use a wrench that big. That's a professional tool. The only person who would ever use something that large is a plumber. So who are we looking for now? I think I'm looking for a red-headed plumber.
Hey, Bob, you want to hand me the yellow pages?
Yeah. There you go. You don't call a private investigator, have him solve the case for you?
No, I'm just gonna call some plumbers.
Plumbers?
Yes, sir, I'm onto something. Just you wait.
All right.
You know if you need any help.
Colorado Springs at that time was about 200,000 people. There were plumbing companies around, but the big ones all had company trucks. They were all clearly marked. So as a process of elimination, I eliminated the big companies, and I started looking and driving around small plumbing shops. Most of the smaller companies were in the downtown and near west side part of the city, so you have to start someplace.
Yeah, I'm doing some renovations on my kitchen.
Okay.
Long story short, I want to move the sink from one side of the room to the other.
Right, sure. I can help with that. Just let me grab a form real quick.
You know, it's kind of a big job. You don't happen to have a partner, do you?
No, it's just me.
Maybe I'll find something of interest, maybe I won't, but I'm going to at least try that.
How you doing? I came by the other day to talk to a guy about a bathroom remodel. I was wondering if you had the estimate ready.
Do you know who you talked to?
I can't remember his name. It was a redheaded guy.
We don't have any red-haired guys here.
Are you sure about that?
I've been here a long time, yeah.
I appreciate the help.
Anytime.
You want to see if anybody that matches this suspect's description maybe works for them. A white guy with red hair. Well, he contacted several plumbing companies and nobody fitting that description worked there.
So I drove around 5 or 6 different little places, and I finally drive around a 7th place. And it's a small plumbing shop, and there's a white pickup outside with a camper shell on it. And I'm thinking, maybe, just maybe, this is the magic truck. Wouldn't that be nice?
Hi, how can I help you?
Yeah, I've got this leaky pipe that I need to have fixed, and this place was recommended by one of my friends. Are any of your plumbers in?
No, they're both out at the moment.
Well, I noticed that white truck outside. Does that belong to one of your guys?
Yeah, it belongs to my son Charles. This is our family business. He must be out with his father.
Well, he's on a job, but he's going to be back here fairly soon.
I can tell him to stop by if you'd like to leave your name.
No, that's okay. I'll stop back. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for coming.
Ma'am, by any chance does your son have red hair?
Yes, do you know him?
No, I just heard a lot about him. Thanks again.
I am making progress. In the case of the attempted murder of Caitlin Bennett, I have placed a local plumber in the crosshairs of my scope. Let's see if he's got the right truck and the right contents.
Based on the auto registration for the truck parked at the plumbing shop, Kenda confirms his suspect's identity, 23-year-old Charles Warren.
All right, Mr. Warren, let's see what you've been up to.
I check the record and I find nothing. There is zero information in the ID and record section on anyone by that name at that age. He has the cleanest possible record. He doesn't have one. He's never even gotten a parking ticket.
With nothing in Charles Warren's record to suggest he's a violent criminal, Kenda is hoping he can use a recent photo of him to help Caitlin Bennett ID her assailant. But there's no photo of Warren on file. At least not yet.
Hello? Judges have no difficulty signing it because you're not really doing anything invasive. So I take this court order, I drive back to the plumbing shop.
Charles Warren?
The one and only. What can I do for you?
Oh, Charles, this is the man I was telling you about, the one with the leaky pipe.
Ma'am, I have more pressing needs with your son. Mr. Warren, I have a court order for your photograph in connection to an attempted murder investigation.
What?
Seriously? Is this some kind of joke?
No joke.
He is shocked that the police want to talk to him.
Well, sure. You can take my photo. You don't need a court order. I didn't do anything.
Go and take your hat off.
Is this really necessary?
It's okay, Mom. It's just a mistake.
Turn to the side.
Oh, heaven's sakes.
I mean, is there any questions I can answer for you? What's this about?
We're all done here. Thanks for your time.
And I'm not questioning him. I don't want to yet. I want more. I thank him for his cooperation. I'll be in contact if it's necessary.
Caitlin, I'm gonna show you some pictures. And I want you to take your time. Tell me if you recognize any of these people on this sheet of paper, okay?
I think that's him.
And she was pointing at the photograph of Charles Warren.
Well, I need you to be sure. Is that the guy that hurt you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's him.
Great. Thank you.
I didn't walk out of that hospital, I floated. It was euphoric, because now it's Warren time.
Fourth all one requesting backup.
As soon as we get that warrant signed, we're gonna hit that house.
I have 3 officers with me, and I have a warrant in my hand, and I have a warrant to search the premises. So we go there, and we knock on the door.
Police, open up!
What's going on? Charles? What's going on? Charles!
Don't move! Let me see your hands! Stand up. Up against the wall. You're under arrest for the attempted murder of Caitlin Bennett.
I didn't do anything.
And there is total shock, total, absolute shock. The mother is shaking. The father is staring at us. The wife doesn't know what to do. The little child is starting to cry.
Let him go!
It's okay, honey.
Stay seated.
It's okay. I promise. I don't know why they think I did something, but I didn't.
It's got to be incomprehensible. And can you imagine being the wife?
It's okay. It's okay.
You know, thinking, what? Why are they coming after my husband?
All right, I'll keep my eyes on them while you guys do your search.
It's okay. Do you really have to go through my things?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I don't know. It's okay, baby.
Anything?
Not yet.
You check the closet?
No.
I'll check.
Police are hoping to find bloody clothes or any other personal effects tying Charles Warren to the attack on Caitlin Bennett.
You got anything? No, I got nothing.
So we are searching this whole house, and we find nothing. The officers come out and report that they find no clothing anywhere, closets, under the beds, in the dressers, any place they look.
Detective. We didn't find anything.
It's got to be something.
We tore this place apart. I mean, you sure we have the right guy?
All right, you stay here and I'll keep looking.
Okay.
In his bedroom is a standard man's 6-drawer dresser. People hide things in predictable places. They don't think they do, but they do. Even burglars know that.
Hey, let's check these again. Let's be extra thorough.
don't want to go into somebody's house and like throw the clothes all over the floor. No, you pull the drawers out, you look through the drawer to see if any evidence is there.
I pull out the top drawer, nothing. I pull out the second drawer.
Bingo.
And taped to the back of the drawer is hair, and it's her color.
Oh, my.
Charles, you son of a bitch. Here we are. I've got you by the throat, and I'm not going to let go. After this long, prolonged investigation, we now have critical physical evidence that 23-year-old Charles Warren is solely responsible for the attempted murder and rape of Caitlin Bennett.
But Kenda's work is far from over.
Now, this is prior to DNA being available.
This guy's a sick son of a bitch. We gotta do everything we can to make sure we build a strong case against him. We gotta get the confession.
I'll get it.
Charles immediately proceeds into absolute denial.
I didn't do any of these things you keep saying. You don't understand. I have a wife and child. Why would I put any of that at risk?
He's trying to convince us that he's a good family man, a good worker, a good citizen of the community.
And to all outward appearances, Charles seems just that.
The problem I'm having, Charles, is we found the hair of the victim in your bedroom. It's kind of odd, isn't it?
And I saw a flash of anger in him that I had not seen.
I told you not to touch my things.
All of a sudden, he was somebody else. And he caught himself. And he went back to innocence.
Why don't you tell me how the hair got there?
How would I know? I bought the dresser at a garage sale. You really think I took the whole thing apart when I got it home?
Charles Warren maintains his innocence for the next 2 hours. And the next.
I don't know any of
And
this.
the next.
And he was continuing with the denial, and I didn't see the anger anymore. I didn't see that again.
Charles, you take this to trial, they're going to destroy you. This is your only chance to get a lighter sentence, is if you cooperate with me. Excuse me for a second.
So my boss looked at me, was holding up his wrist and pointing at his watch, and I knew what he meant.
Do you know what time it is? You're pushing 6 hours here.
I'm close, Sarge.
There is no time frame for an interrogation, but if you go over the 8 hours, the defense attorney will make the argument to a judge that they coerced a confession.
I don't want to give his attorney any ammunition to shoot any holes in our case. I know I can get this. He's starting to crack. I can see it in his eyes. I just need a little more time. You got 30 more. Don't make me regret this. I won't.
So Joe goes back in and totally changes the way the interrogation is being conducted.
And I said,
Charles, what do you like to think about during the day?
and he says, what do you mean?
I mean, people have their favorite dreams they like to think about. Daydreams. Maybe being a football player, movie star, maybe having a lot of money. What's your favorite dream?
And his whole demeanor changed into something else, really scary. And he turned his head and he said, oh, I can't tell you that. Well, hello again, sir. I haven't seen you since you were angry.
Now, why can't you tell me?
Because you'll get mad at me?
No, I won't. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff I've heard in here. You'd be surprised.
For some reason, at that moment, Charles took the clue that, here is someone I could share this with. Here is someone who will appreciate my cleverness.
He was becoming physically excited at the idea of telling me.
All right. I'll tell you what I think about every day.
He took my hands.
My dream is making love to women in their own blood while they're dying. Haven't you ever thought about that?
I wanted to do two things at that moment. I wanted to put my gun in his mouth and pull the trigger, and then I wanted to go take a shower. But I can't do that. And I still wanted to get a statement of him if I could.
Haven't you ever thought about that?
I mean, yeah. Sure I have. Why don't you walk me through what happened?
Charles admitted to me it was a sexual fantasy that it had for years. It was simple. He didn't have to use force. She opened the door and got in. The perfect victim, a volunteer.
Just up this way a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Just give me a minute.
When he tells her to get in the back of the truck where they have more room, that's step one of the plan. Let me get her in the back where I have my toys. And that's what he did.
Back here?
Yeah, I just had to clear some stuff.
Yeah, if you say so.
When he strikes her over the head and renders her unconscious, and he rips her clothes off, she is the fantasy. He then can do whatever he wishes with this unconscious female for his own sexual gratification. How sick is that? It's as sick as it gets. He believes after he completes this attack that he has killed his victim. He disposes of her over the side of this cliff and goes home with his souvenir stuffed in his jeans. Her hair.
It's a hunter's trophy, an item that represented his complete power and his ability to be victorious in subduing his victim.
He liked to touch it at night. He'd get up and open the drawer and touch her hair. Holy smokes. While he's going through all this, I'm just sitting there looking at him. And at the very end of it, he said,
But you know what?
What's that, Charles?
Next time, I'll make sure she's dead.
fortunately for the rest of the world, in your particular case, there isn't going to be a next time.
The charges that were filed was the attempted murder, kidnapping, sexual assault. He decided that he was going to plead guilty But it was obvious that we got a person here that's got some real mental issues.
Warren was examined by a panel of psychiatrists. All concluded that he was textbook insane. At the end of all of this, he was committed to the Colorado State Mental Hospital.
It's possible Charles Warren was a serial killer in the making. But thankfully, because of Caitlin Bennett's bravery, grit, and sheer will to live, the world will never know.
Caitlin, to me, is a hero. I genuinely believe she saved other women as well by saving her own life.
I raised my right hand when I became a policeman, that I would do what I could to protect the community. And I felt I'd done that by identifying and putting Charles where he needed to be. It left an indelible mark on me. It's something you don't easily forget.
New York, 1985, cold case solved. The headline slices through the night like a siren. But rewind the tape and listen to the city breathe the year it began. Summer heat clinging to brick, steam rising from manholes, the hum of neon drowning in distant horns, and a street that looks ordinary until you notice the silence pooling at the curb, a door half open, a hallway light trembling, a heartbeat that should be there and isn't. This is where the story learns to hold its breath. This is where the city blinks and misses something small, and that small thing becomes a crater. The building is a walk-up that leans, tired from holding other people's lives. Third floor, back apartment. A window that looks into a narrow air shaft, stuffed with laundry lines like a quiet flags of surrender. On a Thursday that pretends to be nothing, a neighbor hears a radio playing to no one. The song finishes. Static crawls. The needle drags. Nobody moves. The key in the lock was left on the counter. The coffee cooled to a skim of brown glass. The phone rang until the cord grew heavy with unanswered questions. In 1985, New York knew how to mind its own business. But for once, the city's habit of looking away was a crime scene's alibi. She was 21, art student, night classes, late shifts. Life composed in margins, penciled lightly, the kind you have to tilt under the light to see. Sketches on cheap paper. A subway pass with the corners chewed. A Polaroid taped to the fridge. Her in a denim jacket, hair caught by the wind like it was about to say something. The name in the file will come later. For now, the voice remembers only the feeling of the room when the officers step inside. Refrigerator hum. A clock that doesn't care, and the smell of paint drying over the more difficult truth beneath it. They call for a bus. They call for a supervisor. They call it what it is. And then they start measuring the hole where certainty used to live. Headlines the next day turn everything into shorthand. Young woman, Upper Manhattan. No witnesses, no motive. The city shrugs the way it does when grief is not brand new. But the block remembers. The deli owner on the corner rewinds the morning until he finds her face. A cab driver swears he saw a man waiting by the stoop, smoking as if time meant nothing. A super mutters about a lock that never quite caught. There's a rumor about a boyfriend. Because there is always a rumor about a boyfriend. There's gossip about strange calls because truth clings to the line like a final breath. The rumor becomes a direction. The direction becomes a tunnel. The tunnel becomes a wall. Detectives wear out their shoes. They trace her nights. A classroom with fluorescent lights that buzz like angry bees. A studio that smells like turpentine and love. A bar where dreams are sold by the glass and cashed out in regret. A rooftop where the city looks like possibility stitched together with wire. They count the hours. They count the steps. They count the chances someone had to make a different choice and didn't. The case becomes a stack of paper that grows like a building the city never asked for. It grows and grows until it throws shade on everyone who walks beneath it. There is evidence, of course, the kind that refuses to speak with anything but time. A single fiber the color of dusk, a latent print that smears into a shrug, a hair caught in the hinge of a door trying to close. Back then, these are small, stubborn things that promise everything and surrender nothing. The lab writes reports in the careful handwriting of a priest. The science is a candle in a wind tunnel. The detectives learn the liturgy of might and maybe and almost. They knock on doors until the skin of their knuckles forgets itself. They ask the same question 100 ways and get 100 versions of silence. The city keeps moving. The case stands still. Years grind by like trains under heavy snow. New hands inherit old grief. New chiefs chase new headlines. Files migrate in cardboard boxes that breathe dust each time they're opened. Somewhere, a mother keeps the light on for a child who does not come home. Somewhere, a neighbor moves away and can't explain the feeling that follows them into every new hallway. Somewhere, a detective retires and takes with him a single photograph that isn't evidence anymore. Just a promise he broke to himself. I'll finish this. But the city keeps receipts. A rumor ages into memory. Memory calcifies into folklore. Folklore circles back as a tip that doesn't sound like a tip at first. A caller with a voice wrapped in static. A name mispronounced. A bar that burned down. A basement that flooded one year and coughed up a box the landlord didn't remember owning. In that warped cardboard, a postcard the victim once sent to herself. A trick artists use, mailing a piece to see if it belongs to the world. On the back, a sketch of a face. Unfinished. The eyes are there, though, and the eyes look like they know more than the rest of the page. The detectives who take the case in the modern day are children of the old city. They grew up learning how to read fear from a half-shadow and truth from a half-smile. They are fluent in databases and ghosts. They pull the evidence, the old bags sealed with tape yellowed like the corners of a newspaper. They log the chain of custody like rosary beads. They send what can be sent. The fiber becomes a sequence. The print becomes a probability. The hair becomes a voice singing in numbers, long and strange and unmistakable. Suddenly, the wind tunnel stills. The candle's flame steadies. The science stops whispering and starts to speak. But even now, the past doesn't go quietly. The hits don't arrive like trumpets. They arrive like footsteps on a quiet stairwell. One entry in a national database. Another from a state lab that updated its software last month. A match that isn't a match yet. The kind that requires a human to lean in, to say what the algorithm won't. Look again. A detective stares at a name that means nothing, and yet everything. The name belongs to a man who lived 3 blocks away in 1985, and then didn't. He moved suddenly. He left no forwarding address, because men like him reset their lives like they're changing a light bulb. The file calls him a forklift operator. The neighborhood remembers him as a shadow. They find a traffic ticket. They find a work badge. They find a cousin who says they haven't seen him in years, not since the summer, when the city kept its windows open all night. They find a witness who remembers the smoke smell, the flick of a lighter on the stoop, the brightness of eyes that held too steady. They find a ledger where the landlord recorded rent paid in cash. Always late, always in the exact wrong amount. They find little things that add up like a confession written in dust. But they still need the thing that cannot be argued with. They need the math to shake hands with the memory. So the lab runs the hair again with the new miracles of a century that learned how to interrogate atoms. The sequence tightens. The confidence climbs. a familial ping, a court order, a quiet knock in another state, another street, another life, where the past thought it could sit undisturbed, like sediment at the bottom of a river. The man opens the door with a smile, practiced smooth by years of forgetting on purpose. The swab is quick. The paperwork is slower. The weight is a drum. The result is a sentence without adjectives. Match. And when that word arrives, it doesn't ring like victory. It lands like gravity. Because the city remembers what it owes. It owes a name spoken in full, like a prayer. It owes a mother an end to the sentence that has followed her into every room for 40 years. It owes a building the chance to be just a building again, not a shrine for the unanswerable. The detectives walk the old block at dusk. New paint on the deli sign, a different super, children racing scooters where once there was police tape. They stand in the third-floor hallway, listen for the radio that no longer plays, and say the name aloud. They let it echo. They let it stay. Arrest made, the headline says. Community in shock, the copy insists. But shock is too clean a word. Shock is a flash and gone. This is something thicker. This is the slow realization that time is not mercy. It is merely distance. This is the cold understanding that a man can live an entire life, half an hour from the scene of his first truth, and never look back. This is the part where neighbors count the years and count the times they passed a stranger who wasn't a stranger at all. This is the part where the city inhales and holds it, as if the air could turn the clock by itself. You want motive. The file offers theories the way a storm offers branches. Broken, scattered, pointing everywhere at once. You want certainty. The record gives you measurements. You want a reason that turns the wheel and makes the machine understandable. But the voice of the case, when it finally speaks, is a whisper that says he was there. That is enough. The rest is smoke. And yet we chase the smoke because we need it to draw shapes. We need to believe that chaos can be outlined and named. We need to tell ourselves this is why the door was left half open. This is why the radio sang to an empty room. This is why a city forgot to notice a girl walking up 3 flights and never walking down. Now the camera would glide through the evidence room. Plastic sleeves, labeled envelopes. The collapsed architecture of a life rebuilt from residue. The music would swell low, a pulse under the floorboards. The voice would not rise. It would narrow, sharpen, aim. Because this is not the end. This is the first hinge. The door is about to swing. We have the match. We have the knock at a different door. We have a name in a font that feels heavier than the others. We have a city that has learned to keep candles lit in windows, not because light keeps monsters away, but because it helps the lost find their way back to us, even if the form in which they return is truth. So listen to the city again. The steam, the horns, the constant soft argument of tires on wet pavement. Hear the hallway light humming the same note it did in 1985. See the neighbor's hand pause above the radio dial. A gesture suspended in amber. See the detectives in the present standing where their predecessors stood. The floor scuffed by time. The wall paint new and already tired. Feel that rare crystalline stillness that comes when a puzzle is not solved but aligned. When the edges meet, imperfect, irrefutable. The headline is clean. The story is not. The headline is loud. The echo is louder. And somewhere between the two, the city remembers the promise it made to itself on a Thursday that pretended to be nothing. We will not forget, and forgetting will not save him. New York, 1985, cold case solved. Say it once, and it sounds like closure. Say it twice, and it tastes like metal. The voice will keep saying it, not to celebrate, but to mark a place on the map where the past was found alive. Because tonight, the city stands in the third-floor hallway of its own memory, and the lock finally catches, and the door finally closes, and down the stairs the present runs to meet what's coming next. The word match doesn't echo. It sinks, and the room takes on a different gravity, the kind that pulls every loose detail into orbit and forces it to confess its trajectory. The case file opens like a stage curtain, and there he is. A name that once meant nothing, now underlined so hard, the paper thins. The forklift operator who became a rumor, the neighbor who became a shadow, the man who slipped 3 blocks and 3 decades without leaving a footprint, until the hair spoke. The detectives don't celebrate, they recalibrate. Because once the math shakes hands with memory, the city insists on a pilgrimage. Back to the apartment, back to the stoop, back to the Thursday that pretended to be nothing and became a headline shaped like a blade. Outside, New York insists on weather. Rain like static stitched across the evening. The streets shine, slick and watchful, and the lights smear as if the city is remembering things faster than it can articulate them. The detectives, move in a rhythm learned from 1,000 halls, pause at the entry, let the place introduce itself, step across the threshold as if crossing into someone's last sentence. The current super doesn't know the story, not in his bones. He knows rent checks and leaking radiators and the kind of repair requests you can fix with a flashlight and a polite lie. He points to the 3rd-floor landing, shrugs at the paint that never looks new. People change, he says, and it sounds like a verdict and like nothing at all. Inside the apartment, new tenants, new furniture, a different calendar insisting on a different year. But the bones of the room are the same. The window still looks into that narrow air shaft where laundry lines stretch like quiet declarations. The corner where the radio once sat is now a bookshelf. The outlet is the same. The hum in the wall is the same. The detectives don't touch anything. They don't need to. They've brought the room with them, assembled from photographs and statements and the stubborn geography of regret. One of them, the one who grew up 10 blocks south and swore they'd never move away, closes his eyes and hears the old clock, the one that didn't care. He hears the phone ring, the cord gathering grief like a net pulled through dark water. He opens his eyes and says the victim's name softly, and the present tilts to make space. Back at the precinct, the whiteboard blooms with marker ink, arrows, dates, cross streets. The suspect's name written 4 times, each repetition an argument with time. They plot him as a moving dot, a stuttering path from tenements to day jobs to a borrowed couch in a different borough. They add a note, a bar that used to stand on Amsterdam, vanished in a fire whose cause was unremarkable and therefore suspicious. They add another, a basement that flooded, the warped box, the postcard sketch with the eyes that seemed to know. They plan interviews not as boxes to check, but as doors to knock on in a specific order. The kind of order that coaxes memory into telling the truth. First, the deli owner who remembers faces by what they bought, the victim's coffee light and sweet, the way she tapped the counter twice when she said thanks, like a drummer counting in. He remembers the suspect as a tall man who never removed his cap, who always purchased the same brand of cigarettes, who looked at the door when it opened like it might be carrying a problem with his name on it. The deli owner didn't think of him much. He was a background figure in a city of background figures. But when he hears the name now, something unknots. He remembers the morning the radio played to no one. He remembers the suspect standing outside with smoke coiling like a signature. He remembers thinking, he's waiting for someone who's already home. He didn't tell police then because he didn't know what he knew. Now the memory arrives with a timestamp tattooed on its wrist. Next, the cab driver, older now, vision softened at the edges. But the night roads of 1985 still mapped cleanly inside his skull. He tells them about the man he picked up 2 avenues over. The brief ride, the passenger who stared at his own hands as if they were rehearsing. He can't swear it was the suspect. 3 decades will sand down a face until all that remains is the impression it left. But he remembers the smell of smoke and the way the passenger asked to be dropped at the corner rather than the address. Like he wanted to arrive without arriving, the driver says, and the room nods because they've met men who live like that. The landlord's ledger appears like a relic discovered under church floorboards. Columns in pencil, amounts that never matched the month. Notes like size in the margins. Always late, says he'll get straight. Works nights. The suspect paid in cash, folded clean, the way people do when they want the money to stand in for something else. Proof of normalcy. Rehearsal for a better version of themselves. No forwarding address when he left. No complaint filed. Just a missing person of a different kind. A tenant gone quiet. The ledger doesn't say crime, but it doesn't need to. It says presence. It says opportunity. It says the geography of those crucial hours narrowed to a hallway and a door with a lock that never quite caught. The lab calls again, this time with the cool confidence of instruments in tune. They walk the detectives through the science, a language that used to be a rumor and is now a bell you can ring. The hair yields a profile. The profile yields a tree. The tree yields a branch with the suspect's last name hanging like a ripe necessity. They talk about likelihood ratios and confidence intervals and the math that turns maybe into nearly into yes. The detective who closes his eyes in old rooms writes the numbers down even though he won't use them in the voiceover he's composing in his head. He'll use a simpler word later. He'll say, certain. But certainty has paperwork. It has warrants and chain of custody forms and signatures that must be aligned precisely, like bones being set. The judge reads the affidavit, mutes the basketball game, and signs. The team moves not like hunters, but like archivists, careful in their steps, reverent toward the possibility of finally balancing the books. They don't kick doors, they knock. They don't shout, they ask. Somewhere else. Another state, another street. The suspect opens on a life assembled carefully. A modest house with a half-finished fence. A job that leaves his hands cracked and useful looking. A dog that trusts him. He is the kind of man neighbors describe as quiet, helpful, kept to himself. The chorus line in America's favorite alibi. He sees the detectives and his face performs a feeling. Puzzled politeness with a shadow stitched underneath. He's good at this. Practice makes permanence. They talk on the porch. The camera doesn't push in. It holds, letting the awkwardness bloom. The detectives show IDs that minimize theater. The suspect leans on the doorframe as if he's tired, as if gravity remembers him more than he remembers it. We're following up on an old case, they say, and the phrase is a spell that opens rooms in people's minds. He nods. He was in New York once. He worked nights. He remembers the neighborhood as rough around the edges, then laughs in a way that suggests he'd prefer not to be remembered by the neighborhood either. He agrees to the swab because refusing would be a different kind of trap. The cotton touches his cheek. His eyes blink slowly. The detectives thank him and step off the porch, carrying in a small tube what the city has craved for 40 years. The past, condensed. While the lab spins that future into an answer, the detectives go looking for the other story, the one that makes the city human again. They visit the victim's mother, now a woman whose grief has learned new shapes, quiet morning rituals, the way she sets an extra place only in her head, the way the slightest song from 1985 can turn a grocery aisle into a tunnel. Her hands, when they pick up the photograph, are an index to the case. She tells them about the daughter who painted night scenes, as if darkness were a texture you could fold, about the denim jacket that kept showing up in sketches like a signature, about the day the radio played to no one and how the sound seemed to crawl under the door and get into the walls forever. She listens to the word match, and it doesn't land like joy. It lands like an honest clock. She asks one question. Did she call out? It is the single question the case cannot answer. The detectives do not lie. They hold the silence until it becomes an embrace. They walk the old block at dusk, chasing angles. The stoop where the suspect smoked is repointed brick now, clean lines like a revision. The rooftop, where the city once looked like possibility, is a herb garden under string lights. The present busy, pretending it was always this kind. The hallway light still hums. They retrace the steps. Front door that stutters. 3 flights that punish the knees. Corridor that narrows. The threshold to the room where time stuttered. They imagine the suspect's route. The pace, the pause, the way he might have rehearsed casualness. The way his fingers might have hovered over the lock like a pianist about to strike the wrong chord on purpose. They don't dramatize in their notes, but the voiceover does, because the heart needs choreography when the facts grow spare. An old 911 tape surfaces, digitized from a reel that once lived in a drawer that forgot what it contained. The recording is a time machine with a dial stuck between stations. A neighbor reporting something wrong, the operator keeping the voice calm with practiced syllables, the clatter of a distant TV commercial singing a product long since discontinued. The neighbor describes the radio playing, the door ajar, the coffee mug with its thin sheet of cold. I knocked, she says. It sounded like an empty room learned how to echo. The tape isn't evidence, not exactly. It's atmosphere bound to magnetic tape. But atmosphere is a witness too, and the city calls it back to the stand because the city refuses to let the stage go quiet before the last line is spoken. At the bar that burned down, there's a new place with a new name and the same old noise. But the bartender is a hobby historian of his own corner. He has yellowed clippings framed on the wall and a half-alive Facebook group where locals build altars of memory. He points to a photograph taken in 1985, a crowd on the sidewalk, smoke curling from second-floor windows, faces tilted like sunflowers toward calamity. In the bottom corner, a man with a cap pulls his gaze away from the fire and looks directly at the lens with a look that feels like a challenge in a language you don't speak. Is it him? The image is grainy. The brain wants matches the way hands want handles. The detectives don't put it in the file. The voiceover does, because legends are boxes where we put what the facts can't carry. When the call comes, it arrives without drama, precisely because this is the moment drama would ruin. The lab tech clears her throat, reads the numbers, then closes the case mathematically. Concordance, exclusion probability, statistical gravity pulling the arc of the story down to a single bright dot. The detective writes the shortest sentence in the room. It's him. And still, they do not raise their voices. They gather their papers. They build the chain. They rehearse the questions that have been waiting in their mouths for 40 years, the ones that begin soft and end sharp. They drive. On the way, the radio offers traffic like a confession, closures and delays, alternate side parking, the poetry of setbacks recited with unearned cheer. The city is the same size it always was and somehow bigger now that it has agreed to remember. At every red light, the detectives stare at their reflections in the windshield and see, behind their own faces, the gallery of everyone who touched this case, the first officers, the retired detective with the single photograph, the neighbor who knocked, the mother with the quiet question, the lab techs who kept learning and learning until the instruments could sing. The car smells like coffee and pens. They turn the corner, they arrive. The arrest itself, no theatrics. A request to step outside. A pair of cuffs that click once, twice like a metronome, finding tempo. The suspect says a version of the same line men like him always say, "I didn't do anything." He says it well, with the right amount of outrage braided into confusion, a performance honed by years of small lies that never met an audience this attentive. The detectives answer with words that fit exactly in the space between politeness and inevitability. He is placed in the back seat. The door closes. In the window, briefly, the present overlays the past, and the city sees two images at once. A man being driven away, and a hallway where a radio once played to no one. News moves faster now. Headlines bloom on screens with that same serrated cadence. Cold case, arrest, community in shock. The deli owner texts his daughter. The cab driver turns off the TV and sits with the quiet like an old friend. The bartender posts the N85 photo, and the internet decides who the man in the cap is, with the certainty of people who've never stood in the exact corridor where certainty was stolen. The mother does not go online. She sits with the photograph and says her daughter's name out loud, the way you remind a house who it belongs to. And the voiceover tightens, threads pulled taut. The city breathing in that way it does before the next reveal. Because the end of the chase is not the end of the story. There are questions lined up like witnesses outside a courtroom. No one can quite find. Why did he wait by the stoop? Where did the call come from? What did the unfinished eyes on the postcard recognize that the rest of us missed? We have the match, the knock, the cuffs, the ride. We have the headline that insists on the word solved like a stamp. But the case is a machine with one final gear, and you can hear it engage if you press your ear to the city. It sounds like a door you thought was closed, finally learning how to close all the way. It sounds like the old hallway light humming the exact same note, only this time the note resolves. The ride to the precinct is 15 minutes measured in the slow blink of streetlights, the city folding and unfolding outside the window like a restless animal. The suspect watches his reflection more than the route, the way people do when they're trying to memorize the version of themselves they'll need next. He sits too straight, hands resting like props, jaw working, as if chewing on an alibi that tastes increasingly like paper. In the front, the detectives trade silence like a baton. They don't need words. The case hums between them, a current that warms and burns in equal measure. Somewhere a siren lifts, veers away, and fades. The city has other crises tonight. This one has chosen a quieter instrument. Inside, the rooms are honest. No smoked glass, no hero lighting. Just the hum of old fixtures and the geometry of hard chairs. Papered walls because a precinct is a scrapbook that refuses to be digital. There is comfort in the weight of clipped headlines and the faded faces of other endings. The suspect moves through the corridor with the composure of someone who has outlived many small storms and suspects this one might be weathered the same way by shrinking to the size of the next breath. He registers the vending machine, the uneven tile, the clock slightly fast. People under pressure inventory the trivial. It's how they build a raft. The interview room breathes cool. Table, 2 chairs, glass that looks like a mirror if it comforts you. The recorder's red eye wakes. The detective, with the habit of closing his eyes in old rooms, sits opposite and places a single photograph face down, an invitation to suspense. The other detective leans on the wall, arms crossed in a posture that says, neither friend nor enemy. Gravity. The suspect settles into the performance he's rehearsed since the porch. He's helpful. He's curious. He's not sure why, after all this time, anyone would want to talk to him about something that happened when the city wore a different face. They begin softly, not with the night, but with the decade. Where did you work? Who did you know? What did you love or leave behind? The suspect's answers tumble out in modest shapes. A forklift's muscle, a roommate whose last name he can't recall, a bar he visited only on Fridays for the jukebox, and the way the bartender poured cheap whiskey like it had earned a promotion. Questions swim. Answers follow like fish that think they're leading. The detective nods and does not write every word. He has learned that pens interrupt, that silence is an instrument with more keys than anger. When they bring the conversation to the building, it happens so gently the suspect doesn't feel the turn. You live 3 blocks away. He agrees. You worked nights. He agrees. You sometimes sat on the stoop to smoke. He says no, then corrects himself. Maybe lots of people did. You knew her. The pause is small, a paper cut of quiet that nevertheless bleeds. He says no again, more carefully. The detective slides the photograph a breath closer without flipping it. Take your time, he says, which is the kind of phrase that sounds like mercy until you realize time is what's on trial. In the next room, the team watches through the glass that prefers to be a mirror and tracks temperature like meteorologists. The suspect's pupils when he lies, the way his hands prefer the table edge as if it were a rail on a swaying train. The rhythm of the foot that taps when the questions drift toward the 3rd floor hallway of 1985. The lab numbers sit in a folder by the coffee, a gravity well that bends the room's orbit. Certainty is a tool like any other. You don't swing it first. You set it on the table where it can see the performance and wait until the script runs out of stage. They pivot to the radio, to the apartment's hum, to the Thursday that pretended to be nothing. And this is where the suspect makes his first mistake. He corrects a detail that wasn't offered. It was Wednesday, he says, then blinks like a man who hears the echo of his own voice from a distance. The detective says, "Was it?" in the tone reserved for clerks who miscounted by 1. The suspect shrugs and edits himself. Memory is messy. That's what he'll say later. Tonight, it's the stripe of paint on the hallway floor that they'll follow to the door. They bring out the postcard, the self-addressed sketch with the unfinished eyes, and lay it down like a relic that learned how to accuse. Do you recognize this? He shakes his head and lets his gaze slide off it. Too quick, the way people avert their eyes from cash they don't want to appear hungry for. The detective asks if he ever visited the studio 3 stops south, where the floors drank turpentine and the windows invented sunsets. The suspect smiles like a man who doesn't speak that language. He says he isn't that type. The detective nods, as if agreeing on a harmless facet of personality. Not the type, he repeats, and the room takes a note. They excuse themselves in that practiced way that says, "We are not abandoning you. We are sharpening the next hour." In the hall, the team arranges the pieces. The wrong day correction, the aversion to the postcard, the stoop cigarette becoming a maybe. They decide on the next instrument, not volume, velocity. The second detective returns alone and changes the weather. Faster questions, shorter spaces, the kind of cadence that forces the mind to breathe too quickly. Where did you smoke? Who were you waiting for? Why did you move? Did you ever fix a lock for a neighbor? Did you ever hear the radio through the wall? The suspect answers like a man searching cupboards. He's already checked. There's frustration in the movements, the small hiss of a breath that forgot its choreographer. He asks for water. He drinks like a man who wants time to dissolve in his mouth. Downstairs, the chain of custody walks in precise steps. The evidence bags from 1985, tagged and retagged, become an altar of patience on a steel table. The hair, the fiber the color of dusk, the latent print that once smeared into a shrug, now coaxed into clarity by techniques that didn't exist when the city first looked away. Each item is checked like a heartbeat. Each signature is a footfall tracing a pilgrimage to this exact hour. No fanfare, just the quiet dignity of a job being done fully at last. They decide to show him the numbers without saying the word certain. The detective returns with the folder and opens it carefully. Probability, concordance, a tree that leads to a branch that leads to a name. He lays it out as if setting a chessboard in the middle of a thunderstorm. The suspect reads and arranges disbelief on his face like furniture picked for the wrong room. Science gets it wrong, he says, because this is the kind of phrase that looks like a shelter from far away. The detective agrees. Sometimes, then fetches the confirmation from the swab taken on the porch. Today, not wrong. Today, math and memory hold hands and decide to say the same thing out loud. The suspect leans back and looks at the mirror that is not a mirror. He says nothing for a long time, and you can feel the city slow a fraction, the way it does when trains pause between stations without explanation. Sometimes an answer is a soundless thing, the collapse of a story that sustained a life. He doesn't confess. Men like him rarely do. He offers edges. He offers weather. He offers that he knew people who might have been there. He offers the intoxicating fog of almost. It fills the room and then thins. The detectives do not chase it. Fog only wins if you flail. They book him, and the cuffs click that same concise rhythm, the metronome of inevitability. Paperwork unfurls. A charge acquires a date. A story acquires a docket number. Outside, night compresses into that violet slice before morning considers waking. News vans drowse at the curb, then stir as if they can smell the word headline. The city is learning a new version of an old song, and the chorus goes, "After years an arrest, after decades a name." But the case has a habit of unspooling gifts when you least expect them. Back at the building, a new tenant in the second floor front decides to clean out the storage cage that came with his lease. He's a tidy man with a talent for throwing away what others would curate. He drags out boxes, shakes dust like confetti, and finds wedged behind a collapsed metal shelf a small canvas panel wrapped in brown paper, brittle as fallen leaves. He thinks it's junk. Then he sees the signature, the victim's name. The tenant is not sentimental, but even he understands the weight of a name that has been haunting the stairwell since before he was born. He calls the number in the article he read an hour ago on his phone, the one that said solved, with a confidence that made him swallow. The canvas arrives in the evidence room like a returning traveler. The detectives unwrap it the way people open time capsules buried by braver versions of themselves. The painting is not large. Night cityscape, but not the skyline you frame. This is a slice of block, a view from the fire escape, iron ribs casting shadows like cage bars. In one lit window, a figure sits at a table, a bent head, a hand cupped around a cigarette. The smoke twists into a shape that looks almost like handwriting. Down on the sidewalk, a second figure stands under the stoop light, a cigarette ember hot as an eye. The perspective is impossible. It's as if the artist hovered between floors, saw both at once, herself inside and him outside. The detectives feel something cold lay a hand on the back of their necks. They photograph, they log, they listen. Because paintings talk if you give them the right silence. In the brushwork, there is urgency, not quite panic, as if the hand wanted to record a suspicion before it proved itself. In the corner, under the date, there are initials not hers. The letters are scratched in, not painted. A gesture angry and secretive. The lab will make something of it later. For now, it's a riddle into the margin. The detectives lay the canvas beside the postcard with the unfinished eyes, and the two images hum to each other. A duet across decades. They carry the painting to the victim's mother like a lamp. She sits with it in her lap, and the room changes temperature by a degree you can feel on your teeth. She painted him, the mother says without question. She saw him. Her voice doesn't break. It lowers an ocean shelf. She touches the corner where the initials scratch the surface and winces, as if whoever carved them left a splinter that traveled through time. She sometimes left messages for herself, the mother adds, so she wouldn't talk herself out of what she knew. The detectives take that sentence and hold it like a compass. It points not to motive. Motive is a stage trick, but to proximity, to the truth that danger is often the person who learned your schedule by accident and then made it religion. In the precinct, the suspect asks for a phone call. He dials a number from memory and leaves a voicemail that sounds like someone trying to remember which mask he wore that year. He says, "They're saying things," and the phrase is slippery, crafted to slide off any ear that will have to testify about it later. He hangs up, palms his face, and exhales like a man who has never once listened to his own breath. In the hall, the detectives catalog the phone number, the greeting, the name partially spoken before he thought better. Threads, always threads. Morning breaks without apology. Coffee burns, not because someone forgot, but because time is a burner that cremates plans. The press conference is a choreography of gratitude and precision. The chief reads a statement that has learned how to hold two truths at once. That the city is proud of its persistence, and that pride is a poor salve. The mother stands beside the podium, but does not speak. She is made of a material the press cannot print. Years. Cameras blink like nervous eyes. Someone asks about motive, and the chief talks about evidence instead, because evidence is a language that can withstand translation. The headline travels the world and returns with comments, opinions, certainty for sale by the pound. But on the block, the news feels smaller and heavier, like a key pressed into a palm. The deli owner puts out a small vase with a single flower that doesn't match anything. The cab driver takes the long way home on purpose, just to pass the corner where he dropped a man who stared at his hands. The bartender turns up the jukebox and chooses a song from 1985 that was never about grief and now sounds like a confession overdubbed by fate. At dusk, the detectives climb the 3 flights again, not because the case requires it, but because the city insists on rituals. On the landing, the hallway light hums the same note it has hummed for most of their lives. They stand in front of the door and see it as it was and is ajar, and then closed. A threshold, and then a line. The painting, the postcard, the numbers, the ledger, the tape, the stoop, everything flows toward this rectangle of wood like tributaries accepting the river. The story is not finished. Solved is a word built for headlines and court dockets. The echo will take longer to die. And in that echo, the city makes a final promise before the next turn of the wheel. We will look, and when we cannot look, we will listen. And when we cannot listen, we will stand here anyway, until the light hums its way into a softer, truer note. The arraignment isn't theater, but it pretends. Fluorescent daylight. A judge who has seen every season of this show and refuses spoilers. The suspect enters in a suit that tries too hard to be history-proof, stubble trimmed to suggest cooperation, eyes adjusted to the new temperature of scrutiny. Lawyers murmur, papers rustle, the charge speaks in a voice no one argues with. Not guilty, his attorney says on cue, because the machine has default settings. The judge reads dates like mile markers and sets a path. Discovery, motions, the long corridor of litigation where time stretches and facts walk with ballast tied to their ankles. The city listens from the gallery and feels its pulse sink to the metronome of the clerk's keyboard. Back at the precinct, the painting is a compass that points to rooms no map will admit. Those scratched initials in the corner, 2 letters that look carved with impatience, become the day's obsession. Under magnification, the grooves whisper habits. Right-handed, quick wrist. A tendency to hook the tail of the second letter like a habit tasted and swallowed. The letters might be a signature. They might be a taunt. They might be the artist reminding herself in shorthand who the figure under the stoop light is when she's too tired to trust faces. The lab preps a trace lift, dusts the score marks for residuals long petrified. Science loves patience. Patience loves a riddle that agreed to live forever in the smallest of cuts. The defense arrives like rain on a day you didn't bring an umbrella. A press conference on courthouse steps. A man with a tie the color of warning explaining that DNA is not a story. It is a suggestion, a piece in a collage assembled by strangers. He says the chain of custody is a relic, and relics break. He says memory is a liar, and liars like the stage. He frowns with compassion about communities desperate for closure and institutions eager to supply it. The headline machine obliges, carving the city into camps. Science versus doubt, certainty versus caution, justice versus the ethic of time where inconvenient facts go to nap. The mother does not watch. She waters the plant the neighbors keep giving her and thanks it for the work of staying alive. Detectives return to the basement where the warped box was found. The landlord leads them with a flashlight that throws a cone of pale future. The storage cages rattle like teeth. The concrete sweats. In the far corner, where floodwater once threw a tantrum and left a bootstrap of silt, a hairline crack attacks across the floor like a scar. They kneel because that's what you do when you're asking the past for permission. In the crack, trapped like a sentence that lost the courage to finish, is the corner of another paper parcel. They pry gently. The brown paper sighs open. Inside, a second canvas panel, smaller, rougher, half a study and half a warning. This time, the scene is closer. Same stoop, same ember eye on the curb, but the window above is dark. On the building's brick, a finger-painted swoop of soot. A smear where a hand steadied, where a body paused mid-plan. Under the smear, the same 2 letters, this time cut deeper. The lab pulls a lift and comes back with a ghost of fingerprint ridges inhabiting the groove's dust. It's incomplete, partial, a topographical whisper. But it speaks in the same dialect as the latent from the hinge of a door that tried to close. The text shows overlays like a magician who refuses to be dramatic, ridges that choose the same turns, a bifurcation that forks at identical angles. Numbers bloom again. Math's steady candle. The detective writes a simpler word on his notepad anyway. Closer. The postcards surface as a pattern, not a fluke. An adjunct from the art school. Gray ponytail, hands that move like they're still holding pencils. Remembers the victim's habit of mailing her work back to herself, sealed, postmarked, and unopened, a legal trick to fix an idea in time. She said it kept her honest, he tells them. He produces a battered accordion folder from his closet like a magician's reluctant flourish. Old reviews, class rosters, a slim mailer labeled in the victim's handwriting, returned unopened. Inside, 3 envelopes still sealed, stamps of a decade that made everything look a little louder. The postmarks read July 1985, August 1985, September 1985, the month after. The room holds its breath. They slit the envelopes open along the edge like surgeons. More sketches spill. A series, stoop, window, ember eye. The last sheet is words, not lines. Her handwriting fast and stubborn. If I'm wrong, I'm paranoid, it says. If I'm right, I'm late. They take that sheet to the mother and ask if she recognizes the fear hiding at the edges. She nods, not surprised. She didn't like to say bad things out loud, the mother says. She believed words could make events look up from their tables and notice you. The detectives stand in a kitchen where the clock ticks like a good soldier and feel something align. Not a solution. An intention. A reason for the unfinished eyes on the postcard. The artist looking at risk and refusing to finish drawing its face because finishing would make it permanent. In the DA's office, the trial prep whiteboard grows teeth. Witnesses. Chain of custody timelines rendered with the fussy elegance of a train schedule in a country that still believes in punctuality. The deli owner will testify. The cab driver will testify. The adjunct will testify with a nervous brilliance that makes facts glow. The lab will sing its number hymns. The detectives will anchor the stage with their quiet rehearsal of the hardest sentences. The painting will enter like a modest prophet. The defense will try to make it aesthetic rather than diagnostic. The jury will be told it's not about art, it's about proximity choosing a shape and keeping it. But trials like to invent their own weather. Emotion arrives from the defense. Suppress the familial search that opened the door. Question the warrant that knocked on a new life in a new state. Examine the attic of the evidence room for drafts and drafts and drafts. The judge allows argument and asks for more coffee. The hearing turns technical, a forest of acronyms and protocols. The detective who prefers simple words keeps his eyes on the mother, who sits behind the bar wearing the patience of brick. The prosecutor speaks like a metronome that learned mercy. Chain intact, methods updated and peer-reviewed. Every hand that touched the hair signed a name. Every signature arrived at the same hour. The judge listens to the law about how time does not erase truth. It only charges interest. Meanwhile, across town, a man nobody knew they needed finds his old answering machine in a box of cords and grief. He was the super in 1985, long retired now, and cleaning before moving to a smaller life. The machine is a black brick with buttons that click like an ordinance. He plugs it in for nostalgia and is surprised when the light blinks awake. One message, ancient. The tape inside turns with the wobble of a planet with a tired orbit. He presses play. The voice is the victim's. The timestamp speaks the Thursday that pretended to be nothing. She says she's fine. She says she'll be late. The background carries a sound that the old man didn't notice then, but hears now with his life tuned differently. The hum of the hallway light. The click of a lighter. A single inhale, not hers. I always thought I should give this to someone, he tells the detectives when he brings it in, sheepish as a man confessing to keeping a secret cake. I didn't know the story was still listening. Audio forensics cleans the wobble, stabilizes the pitch, pulls a thin thread of sound no one asked for, but everyone recognizes when it's named. A voice in the background, 2 words, exhaled like a habit. Hold up. The phrase is ordinary and therefore frightening. In court, ordinary is gold because it doesn't try too hard to be true. They won't call it the suspect's voice. The clean rules won't allow it. But they will call it context. They will call it proximity. They will let the jury hear a room that had more than one person thinking it belonged to them. The suspect sits in his cell learning how metal talks. Days stack. His lawyer visits with the confidence of a man who has seen miracles arrive on technicalities and refusals to remember. They rehearse the story that will carry them if the numbers start to feel like fate. He met her in passing. The building was neighborly. Locks failed. People borrowed radios and sugar. His hair could have been on a coat in a hallway that loved to steal winter. Explanations that sound reasonable from far away and less so at 3 feet. He runs them anyway, over and over, as if repetition can hill climb over math. He sleeps. In the bunk above, a stranger dreams that he's falling and does not wake for a long time. The city does small things to make the past fit. The deli owner retires the cup size she always ordered and hangs the dented metal scoop in a place where it will always be an answer to a question that doesn't require words. The cab driver changes his route again, passing the corner not for penance now, but for punctuation. The bartender prints a photo of the painting from the article and tapes it near the register. He watches customers see it, pause, look toward the doorway, as if the ember eye might step in for a drink like any Thursday. In the records room, the detectives unearth a forgotten complaint from the month before the crime. A woman in the adjacent building reported a man pacing the hallway at odd hours, cigarette smoke threading under apartment doors, the click of a lighter like a metronome, counting something no one else could hear. The complaint died on an overworked desk during a blackout of budget and attention. The handwriting on the form is neat, the letters straight-backed and earnest. The officer noted, no visual ID, smell of smoke, possibly tenant from 311B. The suspect lived in 311A. The detectives look at each other, at the note, at the door of memory that swings a little wider, and feel the logic of proximity showing its teeth. Night again. New York insists on weather. A fog skirts the river, climbs stairwells, turns the city into a rehearsal of its own myths. The detective who closes his eyes in old rooms stands in the third-floor hallway with permission and the super's keys. He listens, not for ghosts, because ghosts announce themselves in other ways. He listens for the ordinary, the hum, the distant TV, the plumbing's throat clearing, the note a building sings to itself to prove it's still a building. He flicks his lighter on and off, not for drama, but to learn the rhythm, to feel the distance between click and flame. He places his palm against the wall, finds the height where a hand would steady itself if it were thinking about something else. He looks at his skin, a smudge of dust. He thinks of the swoop on the second canvas. He thinks of the 2 carved letters. He whispers the victim's name and returns the hallway to itself. The DA takes meetings like a conductor, parsing a complex score. There are crescendos to decide, rests to observe. They choose a narrative spine, not built of outrage, but of routine. A pattern of presence, a geography of chance narrowing into a decision. They rehearse the moment when the painting is introduced, and the courtroom's air pressure changes by a hair. They rehearse the gentle way the adjunct will explain mailed sketches as timestamps that hold their breath until the future chooses to open them. They rehearse not saying motive, because the city has finally agreed to an uncomfortable truth. This is not about why. It is about who and where and when, and the why. When it arrives, if it arrives, will be smaller than the hole it tries to fill. The suspect's cousin, found in a state shaped like a long decision, agrees to talk after ignoring the first 3 calls. Kitchen table, cheap coffee. A cousin who chooses words like someone sorting screws. By size, by use, by possibility of injury. He remembers summer 1985. He remembers a sudden move, a favor asked, a couch offered. He remembers a jacket that smelled like smoke and a habit of washing hands until the skin decided not to trust water. He remembers the suspect saying, "That place is over for me," with a smile like a sticker applied crooked. He remembers a lighter clacked like a tell whenever silence stretched too long. He doesn't want to be in the story. He is in the story. He signs a statement anyway, and goes outside to mow a lawn that didn't ask to witness anything. When the pretrial hearing closes, the judge keeps most of the case intact, and the defense leaves with the kind of loss that looks like poise. There will be a trial. There will be a jury that doesn't know the city, but will learn it in 12 sessions. There will be evidence that speaks in numbers and objects that speak in silence, and voices that attempt to knit both into a narrative that can stand upright under the ceiling's indifferent light. There will be a mother seated behind a rail, and a painting on an easel, and a word the city says once and then twice until it tastes like metal. On the way out, the detective sees the hallway light of the courthouse flicker to a new bulb. The old one burned all day and finally gave. For a heartbeat, the corridor is dark, and the city holds the pause like a note it cannot afford to drop. Then the filament catches. The hum resumes. The detective smiles because the sound is familiar and because familiarity tonight feels like progress. He steps into the broader evening where car horns and shoe leather and headlines assemble the current moment's orchestra, and the voiceover lowers, sharper, aimed, already tracking the next turn in a story that pretends to be finished every time it learns a new way to begin. Jury selection turns the courthouse into a theater of ordinary faces. 12 chairs waiting for strangers to admit what they believe about fear. The judge speaks in sentences that have worn grooves from use. The lawyers calibrate charm like a dimmer switch. The potential jurors explain their lives in fragments that sound like alibis for being human. A teacher who grades late at her kitchen table. A maintenance man who trusts his hands more than he trusts experts. A nurse who hears stories no one else survives telling. The prosecutor asks if they can hold two thoughts at once, that science can be right and that it needs friends. The defense asks if anyone has felt the sting of being misunderstood by paperwork. The room nods because paperwork runs the country. In the end, 12 people agree to learn a city they never lived in and remember a year they barely knew. They're sworn in. They look toward the table where the suspect sits, trying to occupy as little air as possible, and toward the row where a mother holds her breath, the way you hold a door. Firmly, politely, refusing to let anything else through. Openings are measured like medicine. The prosecutor stands with a posture that says, "We won't sell you fireworks. We'll sell you daylight." She carries no theatrics, just a chronology. A Thursday that pretended to be nothing. An apartment that learned how to echo. A stoop light and an ember. A hallway hum. A chain of custody built one signature at a time across 4 decades. She speaks the victim's name and lets the sound hang. She does not promise motive. She promises proximity. The defense walks the same map backward and calls it coincidence. He speaks about contamination, as if dust itself were an accomplice. About innocent hair hitchhiking on winter coats. About the arrogance of turning probability into prophecy. He is good at this. He's paid to be. The jurors sit inside the tug-of-war and do what people do when the ground shifts. They fix their eyes on the rope and wait for proof. The first witness brings the past in on paper. A retired officer, neat uniform, careful voice. The kind of man who talks to photographs as he files them. He walks them through the original scene without flourishes. The door ajar, but not broken. The radio working too hard for an audience of furniture. The coffee cooled to a brittle sheen. He lists what they collected and what the year refused to reveal. He doesn't apologize for 1985. He respects it the way divers respect shallow reefs. Beautiful, dangerous, limited. The defense carves at memory's edges, and the retired officer stays sturdy. We did what we could with what we had, he says, and the jurors, instead of the lawyers, answer in their bones. Understood. The deli owner takes the stand with the dignity of someone who spent a life feeding a corner and learned its handwriting. He doesn't strain to remember. He allows the room to lead him back. The coffee light and sweet. The tap-tap of thanks. The man in the cap who looked at the door, always the door, like it might arrive with a bill. He points, careful, almost apologetic, to the suspect. He was there, he says, and the defense reminds him gently that the city is full of men who were there. He agrees. That's the problem with cities. He says, everyone is always there. The jury smiles and notates the difference between presence as fact and presence as gravity. The cab driver brings the room a night road. He places the suspect as a passenger who preferred corners to addresses. He admits what he can't swear to. He hugs the steering wheel of the witness stand and describes a left turn he still makes in his head when he can't sleep. The defense asks how many faces can a man hold after 30 years. The driver says, some faces aren't faces. They're gestures, smells, weights. He remembers smoke and hands rehearsing themselves. He leaves with the courtesy of someone who has ferried strangers long enough to know the precise weight of another person's silence. Then the adjunct, the art school witness with chalk under his nails, and a memory organized like flat files. He introduces the jury to the victim's method, mailing her sketches to herself, time-stamping ideas, saving them unopened as a contract with tomorrow. He produces the envelopes. He names the dates like beads in a rosary. He tells them about the unfinished eyes, the way she painted windows as if they were mirrors turned inside out, the stoop light she treated as a character. He does not diagnose, he describes. The defense tries to shift the painting toward symbolism, toward the music of coincidence. The adjunct declines to be poetic at the wrong time. Artists don't only predict, he says, they record. The room listens to the word record because it sounds like evidence when it's said by someone who has spent a life looking. When the painting itself arrives, it enters quietly. No gasp, just a collective lean. The iron ribs of the fire escape, the lit window holding a figure like a held note. The ember at the curb, small and sovereign. In the far corner, those two carved letters, deeper than brushwork, cut like a correction. The prosecutor doesn't say whose letters they might be. She says they exist. She builds a bridge of context. Similar scratches in the second canvas recovered from flood silt, a habit of carving rather than signing among men who don't belong in rooms like this. The height of the smear matching the suspect's reach without making the mistake of calling it destiny. The defense counters with the museum's oath. Art is interpretation. The prosecutor nods and accepts the rule, then holds up the mailer, the date, the seal. Interpretation can be postmarked. The lab tech speaks numbers as if they're verbs. She narrates the journey of the hair across time. Bag to shelf, shelf to inventory, inventory to vault, vault to bench, under light that doesn't lie. She names protocols like lullabies, chain of custody logs, reagent blanks, controls that complain when touched. She presents likelihood ratios with the humility of someone who knows no one wakes eager for statistics. She never says certainty. She says the odds of the profile belonging to someone else are a constellation that maps to practically no. The defense tries to smuggle in doubt, disguised as curiosity. What about transfer? What about touch? What about that old coat rack in a hallway that passed everyone around like a rumor? She answers each gently, then opens the porch swab result like a window. The same song, today's pitch, chain of custody, the dry hero has its hour. Clerks and custodians who kept pens honest and evidence bags, zipped as if they guarded a sleeping animal, take the stand. They are not exciting, which is exactly why juries believe them. They map signatures like a train schedule that never derailed. One missing minute would have been a feast. There is no missing minute. The defense tries to feed the jury the word backlog until it tastes like rot. The clerks smile the way people smile after balancing ledgers to the penny for 30 years. The ledger balances. Audio arrives humble and lethal. The answering machine's rescued tape plays in a courtroom that stops pretending. The victim's voice says she's fine. She'll be late. Her sentence is polite even to a future that wasn't. Underneath, stabilized sound. Hallway hum. Lighter click. 2 words exhaled by someone close enough to claim the air. Hold up. The prosecutor doesn't point at the suspect and call it his throat. She points at the moment and calls it occupied. The defense objects to suggestion. The judge prefers naming. The jury hears what the city heard when the tape woke up. An ordinary phrase that refuses to be anything but itself. Nobody cries. Even crying would be editorial. The defense swings because that's what defense is. A contamination expert sketches a nightmare set in a storage room in 1996 that didn't happen. A private investigator charges the painting with being a Rorschach, asks the jury to see what they want and then repent. They summon an old roommate who remembers the suspect as a little off but harmless, which is a sentence that never ends well in rooms like this. They tug at the ledger and find nothing but dates that insisted on being themselves. They float a stranger theory into the room like a balloon and watch it bump against corners until it deflates. Mid-trial, a small hinge clicks. The super from 1985, older now, a man whose hands have learned the stubbornness of arthritis, enters with the posture of a witness who isn't sure his piece matters. He tells the jury about the flicker-prone hallway light and the way men would steady themselves against the wall on the third-floor landing, tired or drunk or impatient with stairs. He mentions a service request he forgot until last week, a note about a lock that didn't latch unless you persuaded it like a stubborn child. He produces a carbon copy, the pale blue ghost of his handwriting, that lists the apartment number and a date 3 days before the crime. The defense objects to ghosts. The judge allows the paper to exist. The jury looks at the carbon edges and thinks about how some documents survive by hiding in poor copies. The cousin returns to the narrative in a clean tie and a face that keeps looking for exits. He testifies to the move, the jacket, the washing of hands, the line. That place is over for me. That sounded like a sermon preached to a single believer. He does not malign his blood. He offers observation dressed in regret. The defense tries to turn him into a profiteer of attention. The cousin shrinks like a man allergic to spotlight. The jury believes people who are not enjoying themselves. Cross-examination becomes a choreography of almosts. Did you see him on the stoop that night? Almost. Did you hear his voice on the tape? Almost. Did you touch the painting when it was wrapped? Did you open the envelope before the stamp met the world? Did you break any chain that wasn't yours to hold? Almost is the defense's favorite instrument. The prosecutor lets it play, then brings the room back to the song that doesn't need harmony. The sequence in the hair, the match on the porch, the echo of corridor hum and lighter click, the carved letters that repeat like a nervous habit. Individually, they could be coincidence. Together, coincidence looks like choreography. By the time the suspect takes the stand, against advice but pride is a tide, he has rehearsed a version where he is unlucky and proximity is a prank. He says he never knew her. He says the building was friendly but not intimate. He says he moved because rent has an ego. He says he smokes, but not like that. The prosecutor doesn't raise her voice. She lowers her questions. Why correct Wednesday to Thursday if you weren't counting? Why ask to be dropped at the corner if the address was yours? Why carve letters you claim not to recognize into a painting you claim never to have seen? He meets each with the acrobatics of a man who learned denial as a second language. For a moment, the jury sees the version of him that has survived decades. Adaptable, attentive to the smallest doorway out. Then the prosecutor places the porch swab result on the rail between them. A quiet wall. He looks at the paper, the way a man looks at a cliff he's already stepped off. Outside, the city keeps insisting on weather. Late rain. A wind that turns avenues into hallways. A sun that rehearses its exit with theatrical clouds. Inside, the courtroom air grows denser, as if the building understands it's hosting a transfer of weight. The mother sits as she has always sat, still present, the exact shape of a promise the city made to itself. The detective who closes his eyes in old rooms watches the jurors enter each morning a little quieter, like people who have met a story that insists on rearranging furniture in their heads. One evening recess, The prosecutor steps into the empty hallway and stands under a fluorescent tube that hums the courthouse's own key. For one unnecessary second, the light flickers, a nervous system discharging. She thinks of the third-floor bulb. She thinks of the soot smear at the height of a tired palm. She thinks of the words on the last sketch. If I'm right, I'm late. And she feels the math and the memory lean toward each other like strangers about to acknowledge they've met before. She returns to the room with her hands steady. The defense's last motion is predictable and earnest. Dismiss for insufficiency. The evidence is circumstantial, dressed as scripture. The judge declines with a sentence that sounds like a closing bell. A reasonable jury could find. The phrase opens the door to deliberation, and the corridor of silence beyond it lights up one by one like a runway. The jurors are excused to the room where stories become verdicts. The city exhales into the pause, the way it does between trains, the way it did on a Thursday that pretended to be nothing, the way it will again when doors open and something irrevocable steps out. Deliberation begins with the soft click of a door and the louder click of 12 minds rearranging themselves around a table. No windows that open, a clock that refuses to rush, water in paper cups that feel like props. The jurors sit, their badges like temporary names pinned over permanent lives, and begin the quiet work of turning a city's echo into a sentence. They start where people always start when truth has too many limbs, with the simplest limb, the hair, the match, the number that felt less like math and more like a horizon line. A teacher takes notes in small squared script. A maintenance man places both hands flat on the table as if checking it for level. A nurse breathes evenly, the way she does when coaxing panic back into a body that wants to desert its post. No one votes. Not yet. First they visit the rooms. The deli owner's voice returns, carrying the smell of coffee and the sound of a bell over a door that named every entrance. The cab driver's left turn reappears, the asphalt in his memory still wet. The adjunct sets envelopes on the table in their minds. The postmarks shine like tiny moons. The painting stands in the corner of the deliberation room, even though it's not physically there. Iron ribs and ember eye, and those two carved letters cut with a small knife that didn't want to wait. The audio plays again in the jurors' heads. That hallway hum and the lighter's metronome. The ordinary phrase that refuses to be anything but itself. Hold up. They walk the corridor of doubt because the map requires it. Transfer, the maintenance man says, and the teacher circles the word but draws an arrow to the porch swab and the present-day match that doesn't know how to hitchhike from 1985. Contamination, someone offers, and the nurse sets the chain of custody calendar beside it and lets dates add up the way pulses do. The defense's balloon rises once more and thumps against the ceiling. It is not unkind to doubt. It is unkind to pretend doubt has wings when it has string. A juror with a scar along his thumb, work accident, saw blade, a story he never minds telling, runs his forefinger over the table's laminate and says, he knew the day. The room waits. He corrected Wednesday to Thursday. The quiet that follows is not a silence so much as a gentle gravity. They all remember the correction. That small smug pivot that felt like someone stepping into a spotlight they thought could be dimmed by denial. The teacher writes correct without prompting. The maintenance man nods like a man confirming the pitch of a tuning fork. They take an initial vote to test the air. 10 for guilty, 1 for not sure, 1 for not yet. Not sure says the word motive, and the room lets it sit like a guest who isn't owed anything but hospitality. The nurse speaks softly, Motive is smaller than the hole it claims to fill. The teacher says proximity dresses up as motive more often than motive proves proximity. The juror with the scar remembers the cousin's testimony. That place is over for me. And he hears not a reason, but a rehearsal for erasing. The maintenance man returns to the painting's carved letters like a hand to a familiar rail. He leaves marks, he says. He doesn't sign, he scratches. It isn't evidence by itself. It becomes evidence by belonging. They speak about the mother only briefly, not as a lever, but as a lighthouse. She sits in the corner of their thoughts, like a patient lamp, while they make the map. They recount the super's carbon copy with the pale blue ink that outlived memory by hiding in a stack of forms nobody cared about until the world pivoted. They revisit the smell of smoke threading under doors, the lighter click, kept like a pet habit. They agree to sleep on it, and then do not sleep. You do not sleep well when a city has asked you to choose the weight of words. Morning, the clock owning its own pace. The last holdout is the kind of person who saves receipts from small stores, even though he never returns anything. He wants to honor the possibility of error, because error has honored him before. The group does not bully. The teacher draws 3 lines on paper. Hair now, hair then, and voice behind a voice on a machine built to forget. Take one away, she says. Would the room collapse? He erases with his mind. The room holds. Take 2. He erases further. The room leans. Leave all 3. The room stands. He nods. He is not persuaded by rhetoric. He is persuaded by balance that stops wobbling. The vote is taken again. 12 hands rise together in a choreography no one teaches. The 4-person presses the buzzer. The room exhales into the hallway, and the hallway carries the breath to the courtroom like a runner with a message he fears to read aloud. The city knows this rhythm, the shuffling, the unspeaking, the slow re-entry into a chamber that has learned how to hold beginnings and endings on the same bench. The judge asks if the jury has reached a verdict, and the 4-person says yes in a voice that has learned its new job. The paper is handed. The clerk reads. The words are small, measured, unpoetic on purpose. Guilty. The sound in the room is not applause, not gasp. It is a change in air pressure, a collective shift of weight from one foot to the other. The suspect tilts his head back a fraction, as if asking the ceiling to entertain a different ending, then remembers ceilings don't negotiate. His attorney places a palm on his forearm, a gesture that is equal parts consolation and choreography for the camera. The mother does not move, because moving would suggest this was finished. It is not. She closes her eyes briefly, and somewhere the hallway light hums on cue. Sentencing waits obediently behind paperwork, but the city cannot. The deli owner sends the flour home with a customer who looks like she knows how to carry fragile things. The cab driver goes home early and places his keys in a dish like relics. The bartender wipes down a spotless bar and turns the jukebox low, not to drive away grief, but to let it choose a table. The adjunct writes an email to his students about documenting what you fear and hits delete before sending. Some lessons require the old magic of leaving a message in a mailbox addressed to himself. The detectives return to the 3rd-floor landing in civilian clothes because some pilgrimages you take as a person, not a badge. The super lets them in and then leaves them with the air. They stand where a hand once steadied itself and try to feel nothing and fail. The lighter in the detective's pocket stays dark. He doesn't need to hear the click anymore. He can hear it without flame. He says the victim's name quietly, the way you say a word you fear will thin if overused. The other detective sits on the second step and ties a shoelace that doesn't need tying. Rituals don't care about utility. At sentencing, the courtroom is a different animal. It knows how to growl without raising its voice. The judge reads the statute as if reciting an old weather report. Storms that passed and storms that stayed. The prosecutor speaks last facts first, reminding the record what will matter when the years begin to scuff the edges again. The defense asks for leniency with the grace of someone who knows he's carving a small mercy from granite. The suspect says a version of the same line men like him always say in this moment. He didn't do it. And the sentence slips across the room like oil. True or not, it won't stick where he hopes. Then the mother chooses to speak, not because the law requires it or because the cameras crave it, but because words have been waiting in her throat for 40 years and refusal has turned into ache. She's not eloquent because eloquence is a costume. She's exact. She begins with a thank you, which is how strong people start when they intend to make the room learn a new word for strength. She names winter coats and the way radios sound when they're left alone. She names the exact shade of blue her daughter chose whenever the sky disappointed. She names the third-floor bulb and the hum it taught her to hear in everything. She does not say forgiveness. She does not say hate. She lets the room decide which words it deserves. The judge nods because some testimony deserves a robe. The sentence arrives dressed in numbers, years accrued like interest on a debt the city refused to write off. The suspect is led away, and a photographer captures him in that half-step where a man is between one reality and another, which has always been his favorite place to live. The door swings, closes, and for a second, the hallway outside the courtroom holds a precise silence that tastes like coins. The headline machine does what it does. Solved, closure. Justice delayed. The city reads and nods and does not nod. Because closure, when it's real, is too private to trend. What the city actually feels is quieter. Alignment. A sense that weight was shifted to its proper shelf. Not all the way, never all the way, but enough that stairs don't invent extra steps when you're tired. Yet the story refuses to finish on schedule, because stories learn from the people who make them. And the victim was an artist who left messages for herself in envelopes she timed to the future. A week after sentencing, the adjunct, still doing what teachers do, open boxes other people leave on desks, finds at the bottom of a donated flat file a slender wooden shipping tube with a postage label faded to sepia. The return address is the art school. The destination is the victim's apartment. The postmark sleeps in the summer before the crime. It was never delivered, lost in the labyrinth of campus mailrooms that swallow time like gum under a desk. He brings it to the detectives because habits save us. They open it with the care people use on broken clocks. Inside, a rolled charcoal study slides free. Is the stoop again, but not the one we know. No ember eye, no lit window, afternoon light. Children ghosted in outline on scooters. Shadows of fire escape ribs draped like lace. In the lower margin, a line in her hand. Before anything looked at me. The detectives go quiet the way you do when a harmless word finds a sharp edge. On the reverse, a rubbing in graphite. Brick texture, mortar lines, and faint but indisputable, the same two carved letters, present before the night, before the window, before the ember, before the city learned to hold its breath. The initials were there when everything still pretended to be ordinary. They were not a taunt carved after. They were a signature, carved before. The implication disturbs the furniture of the mind. If the letters predate the night, the carving is not a confession of presence, but proof of a residence. A habit left everywhere, like a fingerprint's cousin. The initials now feel less like a single name, and more like a club, a pair, a crew. The kind of small allegiance men form around vices and stairwells. The detectives reconsider the ledger's notes about rent in cash, always late, the click of a lighter as a neighborhood soundtrack, the complaint about a man pacing the adjacent building's hallway, and isolate a detail that was background until this second. The letters matched a tag the sanitation crew scrubbed off a utility door 2 blocks east in 1985, recorded in a photograph the city took for Blight Records. The initials appear there too, quick and hooked. A pattern not of one man, but of a language. They pulled the Blight photo from municipal archives, a bureaucratic attic nobody thought would matter to a murder trial. The image is a time capsule that didn't agree to be polite. A utility door, paint blistered, the initials scrawled like a dare. Above it, a chalk arrow, crude, pointing up toward the fire escape. In the corner, a scorch mark low on the wall. Old, circular cigarette pressed out with the force of a mood. The bartender's 1985 fire licks back into relevance, the way fires do when you give them oxygen. The bar that burned. The suit on the second canvas. The suit height matching the suspect's reach. If there was a crew that signed with the same 2 letters, maybe the Ember Eye was not solitary. Maybe Ember Eyes were a pair. This is not exoneration. It is context mutating, widening, teaching humility. The detectives sit with it like people accepting that a map just grew more streets while their shoes are already tired. They request records on small arsons, alleyway scorchings, nuisance fires from that summer. A list arrives, longer than comfort permits, annotated by a fire marshal who remembers that season like a fever. Trash fires, dumpster lid blisters, a stairwell smoke that never quite became the pageantry of flame. In several, witnesses mention 2 men, one taller, one with a habit of tapping the lighter twice before the third spark caught. The habit sings, tap tap flame, the click the city learned to hear. They pull a name from one report. An associate, a drinking buddy, a man who moved without forwarding, the way stories do when they don't think they're being watched. He died in the 90s. Overdose. No autopsy questions because the year didn't have time to ask. Photographs surface of him on a stoop not far from the one we know. A cap pulled low, a jaw built for dismissing consequence. In the photographs, the initials appear on a nearby panel.